Well, hello folks, and welcome to episode 236, I'll get it right this time, of Retropower and Cut. And join us here in the fabrication shop as usual. Got me a Roundstone coffee, my Retropower mug. If you want a Retropower mug, get yourself one of those. And we're going to start with Simita. It's been in the background for quite a long time, and as people, including the customer, would be aware, things have dropped back out of the list of just events a little bit, just because of the engineering input that was required and space in mine and other people's brains that was capable of dealing with that engineering input. However, that's now back right to the top of that list and being worked on. So this week, the key things that have been done is basically some preparation for a visit by the customers of this car. There are 3 of them that are visiting next week. And to that end, we want to do a little bit of a reasonably crude, but hopefully reasonably accurate seating mock-up, just to check various things. So to that end, we wanted the car at ride height, with a seat mounted strongly enough that we're not going to fall out, and with the engine and gearbox in. And in order to do that, various work's gone on. So as you can see, the engine and gearbox is in, which is a pretty major step forward. To recap, for those unaware, it's a Cosworth GAA V6 built by Rick Wood, 4 litre capacity. They were 3.4 in period, mated to a ZF 5-183 or 183-5, I can't remember what it is, but it's the ZF gearbox that would have been fitted to Mark II Escorts in period in the rally, the Group 4 cars, and also fitted to the Lotus Sunbeam, and this one has Lotus Sunbeam ratios in it. That is now loosely mounted. It's not really mounted, it is resting on it has a flat dry sump pan that Rick Wood makes, and it's sat basically on a piece of spacer, MDF, which is spacing it up by 8mm from the cross reinforcer bars that are in the bottom of the TVR, the modified TVR chassis from Sport Motive. So that's sat where it's loosely where it's going to sit. I think we're going to try and raise that another 4 or 5mm, just so we've got a minimum of 10mm from the bottom of the sump to that X. The engine mountings are not going to be super soft on this, so I think 10mm would be ample clearance. And then the gearbox is resting on a block of wood, but in its correct position, all centred, everything's sitting where it is. To do that necessitated quite a lot of cutting of the bulkhead, which we knew it would. So we've done sort of removed the body, trimmed a chunk of that out, and then refitted the body. And the final positioning of that has then pretty much backed up what we established in CAD, which was that the limiting factor was going to be the fuel rail here. Now Rick did some work on getting the fuel rail height down by using the very shortest injectors he could find that were suitable in terms of flow, and also machining down the injector pockets on these intake runners are ones that Rick's done specifically for an EFI conversion for this engine. So these are purpose made, purpose cast for this job. And he's shortened them down as far as he can while still getting the right shape to them. And basically got the height of everything as low as it possibly can be. And this point here is the limiting factor versus the bonnet height. At the moment we have clearance. I suspect if we raise the engine a few millimetres, we probably won't. But at the same time, there is a slightly raised section in the middle of the bonnet, and we're making a new bonnet, so it's no problem to just slightly alter the centre of the bonnet. We don't want a great big bulge in it, but it wouldn't be a problem to put a slight detail up the centre of the bonnet, which would give us some more clearance. So basically, it fits. In a nutshell, it fits. Onto the seating and the pedals, that was the other thing we've done, is also we want pedals in. So I've got a pedal box, which is a sort of a universal pedal box, which is mocked up in the car, mounted in the position it will be, or it can be mounted in, going on down the line, and I think that position will be good. It's got a little bit of right-hand offset. Those looking at the car will notice it's got a bit of right offset in it, but interestingly the brake pedal is centred on the centre line of the original Simita brake pedal. So the pedal offset that this has is identical to what the original Simita pedal offset was. So I don't think it feels wrong sitting in the car. And then the seating position, we've jiggled around with that a little bit and worked out. We've had to drop the seat lower than I thought we were going to, but it is still within the confines of the floor pan. We've not had to do a particularly drop section in the floor pan to get the seat in that position. The one fly in the ointment, which we're leaving for the moment until the customer's visited, is the width, which we knew was going to be tight. Now this seat's actually slightly wider than the seats that we would be using, however there is no width. Width is an issue. This car is actually extremely narrow, and you can see why on the SE6 Reliant widened the car. Now we could make our lives very easy and just be fitting an SE6 body to this. However, we much prefer the look of the SE5 and the customer's car. This start point is an SE5, and we'll have a discussion with the customer next week, but I'm pretty certain they would want to keep it as a modified SE5 rather than just going to an SE6. And to that end, I think following a discussion with the customer next week, I suspect we're going to have to modify the chassis a little bit. I think we're going to have to actually narrow the centre section of the chassis very slightly, probably leave the top the current width, but narrow the bottom. Now I don't want to do that because it's going to reduce the torsional stiffness of the chassis, which is already not that great on a TVR chassis, albeit it's better on this than it was on the original TVR. However, we have lengthened it as well, which will reduce the torsional rigidity, and narrowing it slightly will reduce it some more. However, what we can do, and we will do, is make a bolt-in lower piece, which basically caps off the bottom of the transmission tunnel on this car. I think when Ian at Sport Motive is fitting Chevy LS engines to TVRs, he probably has to keep quite a lot of the bottom of that tunnel area open to get heat out from the exhaust system. They would be running a bigger exhaust system than we will be on this engine, and I think we can actually close in the very centre section of the chassis, which will regain any torsional rigidity lost by narrowing the base of the chassis in that area. But I think we're probably going to have to do that to get an adequate seat to door and elbow clearance. Have to move, if we could move the seat inboard by 20 millimeters, it would make all the difference. So I think we're probably going to have to do that. There was always an area where we were unsure. In the CAD, it looked doable but tight. In reality, in front of you now on camera, it looks doable but tight. And I think the reality is we're probably going to have to untighten it just a shade. Interesting, I look back at my notes because the other car that I've built with a similar backbone down the centre to this was, those with long memories will remember the Morris Minor that we built, which also had a backbone down the centre. Although it was all steel, that had a similar tubular backbone to accommodate the MX-5 front and rear subframes that I fitted in that car, and I made the tunnel as tight as I could possibly get it, ridiculously close to the original Mazda PPF that joins the diff to the gearbox. And at the time I thought, well, this is crazy because a Morris Minor is really narrow. Well, would you believe inner sill to inner sill, a Reliant Simita SE5 is actually within about 5 millimeters the same width as a Morris Minor. In fact, if anything, I think this is, at the B pillar point, the Reliant Simita actually measures 5 millimeters narrower than the Morris Minor. So it's quite an eye-opening because it doesn't look that narrow, but it is. So we're fighting a little battle there. Other than that, everything's looking really good. The body shell's screwed on to the outriggers. I think last week I just started looking at designing the outriggers for the chassis. They're now welded on. Temporarily welded, they're heavily tack welded on so that they can be removed easily enough if a change needs to be made, but they're in the right place if they could stay. And they basically replicate the original chassis pickups, the original outriggers on the Simita chassis, and they're picking up the original recess that the Simita body sat on the Simita chassis. So that's all worked out really quite well. Say the boot floor situation looks pretty good. That's all going to go where it's going to go. Everything's lining up really very well. The only issue, as I say, is the seat, and I think we're going to need to just squeeze the chassis a little bit there so we can move the seat inboard slightly and just gain a little bit of space. But yeah, coming along and seeing this the other day with the body off and just the engine and gearbox in the chassis was quite a thing. It was, I put that on my Instagram. I don't put that much on there, just the important things that come up in life, and it was very interesting seeing that. I was moved a little bit. It really did look like a period vehicle, sort of like you could see the 1960s, 1970s influence there, and it was really impressive. I was very happy to see it at that stage. So that's where we're at on Simita. Obviously, very early stages of things. We've got a lot of design work to do. But we've got to get the basic building blocks in the right places to enable us to do that design work. Moving on from that, we have a little bit of progress on the E-type. Now, this has been largely, there's progress upstairs, which I'll let George enlighten you on, although he's probably sick of talking about it by now. But a bit of progress down here, which actually ties into the body shop. So I'm going to pick up bits on the body shop. I'm going to cover the body shop this week. I think maybe next week might get Gaz on camera if we can urge him in front of camera. We might get Gaz on camera. But this week, Gaz has been doing a bit of work on the E-type hardtop. He's got this all stripped back, got all the paint off it because it didn't have as much paint on as I thought it was going to actually, but it had a couple of layers of paint on. It's got that all stripped back, and then he's put some release tape onto the back body, onto the rear deck panel of the car, and then basically filled this cut down where we've trimmed the edges of this hardtop. He's then backfilled that against the release tape, dropped this on, clamped it all in place, and then basically built up the bottom of this hardtop with filler to the shape it needs to be. Got all that shaped and sanded and finalised and tidied up, and that's looking good now. That's looking pretty close enough, I think, that the remaining fit will be done by the rubbers the neoprene sponge seal that we've got to put under this to enable it to seal to the body. So that's all looking really, really good. As I say, the other progress on this is upstairs. I've been looking at some fuel tank related things. I'm not going to bore you with them now. It's constant battle of clearance around the fuel tank versus getting adequately sized fittings in and getting a filler neck in. It's not that exciting. I'll show you once we've got finalised design and actually done some fabrication of the tank. But needless to say, it's all a squeeze. But George will tell you about things that are a squeeze on this car because all of the front end stuff's also a squeeze. So I'll let him elaborate on that. And moving on to Saab. Bobby has been finalising the A-pillar structure on this, and then also cracking on with the inner wing tops. So he's got the inner wing tops fabricated for both sides. He's obviously got all of the fabrication finished on the main A-pillar structure there, and then he's cracked on with getting the inner wing tops fabricated, these top hat sections with the bend in the centre at the back of where the original strut top was. You'll remember that we've trimmed down the Audi S4 inner wing tops there just to lose some height because we had a crunch point here and a little bit here between the Audi S4 and the Saab body there, the Saab bonnet and wing top. We had a bit of a clash where the Saab, effectively the Audi was poking through the Saab surface. Now we're modifying the Saab surface, but even in that area, the bonnet line is not really being changed significantly, and we didn't want that coming through. So Bobby's dropped the line there, trimmed back the S4 inner wing top, reshaped a section around in that area, and then fabricated these, which is now at the brink of getting fixed in place. We mentioned last week the inner sections with the bolt-on plates on the end that, the welded-in plates in the end that will then be drilled and threaded. And we also mentioned last week, actually, now you can see it in place, the wiring duct that has been put into the A-pillar to enable the wiring to be passed through. And that's been done in stainless, as I mentioned last time, so that we don't get rust in there where we can't, because we can't really paint properly inside that. So that's been made in stainless. And then also, while it's in my hand, Bobby's also been cracking on with getting the final A-pillar closing sections finished. As you can see now, considering that Bobby prior to coming here, wouldn't have considered himself a sheet metal worker, he's done a pretty damn nice job of that. You could put that in front of quite a lot of people, even fairly skilled people, and say, can you make me one of them? And they probably wouldn't know where to start. It's a reasonably complex piece. And he's done an extremely nice job of it. Obviously the Saab door seal system has now got to come, the seal is going to operate against this edge here, so this is quite an important point around here, and it's a control point, if you like, of where the door shut operates. As an aside, again, going off on many tangents as I do, if you glance up here, you see this blue line. This is where Bobby has put some die-chem blue onto some marking out blue onto the door seals. When he had the door fitted, he put blue on the door seal and then shut the door to just see where the seal actually contacts. And strangely, as you'll notice, for those familiar with a car door seal system, you'd normally have a sponge bubble type seal that went onto this weld flange, and then the door would close against it and pinch against the sponge bubble and crush it flat on flat. The Saab doesn't work like that. The Saab has the bubble fitted to the door, and it doesn't work onto a flat section, it works onto the corner. And it actually shuts onto that corner, so you can see where the contact is all the way around there. And it's a corner contact. It's a very strange arrangement, but we're basically preserving that. Given that we don't really want to remake the entire door, we're preserving that arrangement all the way around. And so Bobby's A-pillar fabrication that he's done is designed to preserve that. The other section that Bobby's been having a look at, an initial look at, is the HVAC installation on this. He's had the heating and ventilation box, which obviously consists of the blend motors, the blower, the intake, the actual air blower unit, the air conditioning evaporator, and the heater matrix. He's had that down, so he can just have a look and offer up and see where it's going to go in. He can't do any further on that now, which is why it's linking into the A-pillar fabrication. He can't do any more to fit that until he can remove the side-to-side bracing that we've got fitted into the car. This piece of 50 by 25 box that braced the inside of the A-pillars. When we first cut the car to pieces, that bracing was put in. Well, he can't remove it. It's literally around this side. I'm sure Jamie will be able to get a snap of it later on a bit of B-roll, but it's literally just holding a small fragment of the original inner A post of the Saab in place on this side now. Bobby's just using that as a guide as to where to fit that piece that we were looking at a minute ago. It's just holding that fragment in place. Once that pillar's ready to go and Bobby can get that fitted in place, then that fragment can go and that brace is no longer doing anything this side. And again, then it's repeat the other side. He's doing the same fabrication the other side, and again the car will come back to this small fragment, have the new A-pillar fitted, and then that bracing can come out. Once that bracing can come out, then he can carry on having a look at the HVAC setup and being able to get that in place and ascertain whether we can use some of it, all of it, none of it, whatever. I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to use a significant quantity of it. That was the discussion we had on Tuesday when we had a meeting, was that Bobby thinks we'll be able to use a good chunk of it. The obstacles to overcome are the air intake versus water rejection from that area. We've got a little bit of detail work to do there, and then also working out what the controls are on that heater system, working out what the motors are, whether we can control them, because we basically want to use the mechanical part of the original Audi unit but put our own controls on it, because we don't want to use the Audi control interface. So there's some work for Alex on the electrical side there, and the electronics side, but Bobby's just going to have a quick look at it and work out what the motors are and get the background work done in terms of the mechanicals, whether we've got to change motors and things like that. So all exciting stuff. And yeah, progressing now, I think certainly by end of play next week, the A-pillar structures and the inner wing top rail structures should all be in place. That's a pretty exciting moment, because they have been as you'll be aware from the previous weeks of video, they have been the hardest part of the car to get right. The most challenging, extremely challenging job, and it's coming towards an end now. And so I think Bobby's just had some material this morning arrive. We've just ordered this morning and got from our local metal supplier, a company called Metal Mania. Lovely couple that run that. Lovely people, and very, very helpful in terms of just small bits of metal. We use two companies, we use them and we use Rapid Metals. One of them holds some more stock of certain things, and one of them holds more stock of other things, so we use them both a bit. But we've just picked up some 1/2-inch OD 16 gauge steel tubing with which to make some drain tubes in this pillar. Just some of the short drain water path drain tubes that go in the pillars. So Bobby's going to be able to get those done next as well. So yeah, that's all coming together. Good progress. Everything's coming together nicely. Move on from that, because I'm waffling on. Come around here and we'll see Stu and Martin. We've got a two-man team on the E9, and they're both here. Martin's running off before he gets caught on camera. He's over there, he's hiding. But yeah, the duo have been working on the E9. And Stu, in a nutshell, a really brief nutshell, I will elaborate a little bit, but in a very brief nutshell, Stu's doing the sill on that side, same as he did on this side, basically repeating what he's done on the other side. Makes sense for Stu to carry on with that because he'd already worked it all out and there was a bit of awkward working out to do, and he's done that, so he's repeating it that side. Within reason, it's hopefully repeat. I'm sure there's complications, there always is. Nothing's ever quite the same, but that's the plan. And then Martin's carried on with the work he was doing on this side. His main objective yesterday was getting this panel in, which is the bulkhead end repair section. Basically, the bulkhead was good as far as the inner wing seam. In fact, it was good to about here. But it made sense to do the joint at the original inner wing seam there, as that's a strong point to go for. And we've actually put a lap joint in there. The bulkhead's not exactly the strongest thing in the world. Rather than butt welding it in behind that flange, which was one of the ways of doing it neatly, we've actually elected to lap it, joggle the panel and lap weld it to give us an extra thickness of material in line with that inner wing, just to add a bit more strength to the structure. Normally we would butt weld that and make it so that it's completely invisible. It was actually a deliberate decision not to do that on this, just because the panels are so weak. So that's done. Again, a very, very nice panel from Wolof and Nesch in Germany, or Wolof Nesch as they trade. Very, very, very good panel, really nice pressing, crisp in all the right places, fitted bang on. Again, top marks on that, everything's coming together nicely. So the A panel's in, A pillar's in, end of bulkhead's in, all coming together really well. Obviously, Martin had done the, had he done, no, he's not here now. Had he done the, was that this week? Was the screen repair this week as well?
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah. I think I mentioned last week that Martin had done the screen repair, but he hadn't actually done this side. The inner, he'd repaired the inner and got that tidied up, but not put the outer panel on. So he's also now put this outer panel on, joined up here and just there. Got that butt welded in, all cleaned up and nice and tidy. Jamie's leaning on my car, not realising the body shell's loose on it and it's not bolted on. So yeah, he's got that welded in, all metal finished and nice and tidy. So again, a lovely job there. And then pointing through the car, Stu's cracking on and getting really good progress on the sill and floor. So he's got the floor repair in on the offside, on the driver's side of the car. It is a right-hand drive. The floor repair is in and done. The A panel repair is in and done, and the sill repair is progressing well. He's got the inner sill assembled. I'm not going to run around. I was going to run around and see, but I'm not going to cock Jamie up and make a mess of things. But I think, Stu, you got the inner sill all assembled. That's all assembled and in now. The bottom piece of the B post on that side. Is that what you're working on at the minute?
No, that's sort of
piecing together the rear half at the minute.
Doing the rear bit first, and then I can line the centre.
Yeah.
Section.
It's basically a multi-stage process, as we said this side. You've got to get the inner sill in place in the car. Then you can piece together the reinforcing sections that go inside that. There's a jacking point, there's a support piece, and then there's a centre sill section that goes in the middle, and then all of that then ties in to this section here at the rear. So there's a number of stages to the inner piece, and there's this bottom piece of the B post that also then ties into that centre section of the sill. So getting all of that done in order and then being able to fit it is I can't remember all the exact order of everything, but basically getting all that done in the right order. Stu's got a big pile of pieces there, all of which are sections of the sill. So it all has to be done in the right order and all worked out. So there's a bit of a path to that, which he's probably about halfway through at the moment. It's not an inconsiderable piece of work. In fact, he's holding the centre section just there then, but it's all coming together nicely. Sure, Jamie's got some B-roll of the various pieces of that, which will make a lot more sense than me trying to explain it now. So that's pretty much where we're at on the E9, forging ahead with the metal repair, and there's a lot more car there now. That's really coming together well. It's starting to look like a car again, which I'm sure the owner will be pleased, because he was quite depressed seeing the state of it to start with. I think he'll be a lot more chipper when he sees the state of it in probably another week's time. It's going to start looking like a hell of a lot more of a car, which is good. Then moving on from that, Matt has been working here. So as you can see, nicely newly powder coated Select bench. We've heard nothing about stickers for the bench. I'll get somebody to drop Select an email or something. But yes, we've got the Select jig in its bay now for the build of this car. That's all levelled up. Matt's got that all levelled up. We've got a precision machine level to level that absolutely crack on, so that then any levels we take all the way through the build of this car now, that bench won't move, won't be touched. So any level that we take all the way through the build of the rest of the car will be accurate, so we can actually use that as a reliable way of setting things up. And then More obviously, there's a ruddy great chassis being built on here. As you can see, it's a pretty heavy duty item. It's pretty agricultural by our standards, but that is deliberate really, in that it's a way of tying into the original Aston structure. The original Aston structure was equally, if not more, agricultural than this, in that it appeared to have been less well thought through. So this chassis is designed to pick up exactly where the original Aston chassis did. So the original Aston chassis used a sill box structure that ran down both sides of the car, and then a centre pair of rails that ran down and finished under the seats. We're actually running a peripheral ladder frame, if you like. So we're running this main box section outer structure, and then putting the front and rear outriggers, if you like, off that. And then we'll be carrying the Corvette suspension on laser cut and folded subframes that pick up off these two parallel beam sections there and these two parallel beam sections here. So they'll be picked up off the laser cut pieces, which are hopefully going to be with us next week from Mack Industries, who are doing the laser cutting. I had a message from Hugh last night actually. He messaged me back just to say, yeah, they're on with it, and we should see it, hopefully, fingers crossed, if all goes well. I think they were waiting for some material, but all being well, we should see those bits next week, which will enable us to really crack on and get the main structural elements of the chassis done. But yeah, basically front subframe parts to go on here, back subframe parts. I say subframe, that will all be part of the chassis itself, and that's what will tie these outriggers and these sections here. These will all be tied together by those sub-assemblies that you'll have seen on the CAD footage that we've got. So Matt's getting all the chassis laid out. You've got these sections fabricated. He's done all this on the select bench, because we know that's a known flat area. So he's getting all this lot tacked up, all checked for true and welded out. To that end, he picked up a little thing at a steam rally the other day. I'll show you this. This is quite impressive. He picked up a square. Thinking ahead on this job, picked up this, which is a pretty nice square. It's a proper Moore and Wright a number 402 inspection square. We've double checked it against a known good square, and it is good. It's not been dropped or messed around with. So he's got it ready now to use as a hammer. He's been using it. It's absolutely the ideal square for doing this sort of work. So that was a nice find at the steam rally that Matt's picked up. So yeah, chassis is coming along really well. He's just on sort of finalising basically the front end parts, he's just got this tube in here, finalising the bits for the rear that will pick up the rear subframe sections. And then I think it's pretty much at the stage where he can fully weld the remaining bits that aren't fully welded, can be fully welded, welds dressed, and then we'll be waiting for the laser cut parts then to progress from there. So we'll probably move back on to trimming out some of the last parts of the Aston. Now we've got a chassis that's flat and good on the jig, we'll probably be over to trimming some more the last pieces out of the Aston body shell. I was sort of holding fire on the Brave Pants bit on that until we'd actually got the chassis at the right width in the right places on here, so we can literally pick it up and drop it on top. We can't really fit it until we've done the rear subframe mounting pieces, the laser cut pieces that go here, because the body shell will be in the way of fabricating that, so we can't really do that. It would be okay at the front because there is no front on the Aston, so we'd still be able to do the fabrication there, but the rear part, the boot area, will be in the way, so we would have to wait, and we can't really fit the body shell to this until the rear fabrication's done. But yeah, coming along really well, chassis looking good, happy with how everything's going. If you're wondering why this area in particular here looks rather unfinished, there's some folded sections that join basically I call it a torsion box. There's basically a structure that feeds the loadings on this rail into that side member here, which is a big torsional box that picks up off the back of this rail, and that we're waiting for the CNC cut and folded parts to be able to do that, which obviously we've not got yet, but they're what they're going to feed the forces in there. And then obviously all of this section will be remember, this chassis isn't an independent chassis, this is going to be welded into the body shell, and there will be a big bulkhead section over here which then carries the stresses across here, so this will be open in the middle. Obviously the front subframe will tie this together up to this sort of stage here, but then this section's open, the bulkhead will carry the loads over there, and then the transmission tunnel sections come back and feed down, and this tube here has got to have sections cut out of it for exhaust clearance and prop shaft clearance. Exhaust clearance is at the bottom, prop shaft clearance at the top actually, because the prop comes through sort of up here somewhere. So we've got various bits of cutting out to do on that, but that's generally best done after the chassis is all coupled together, after everything's clamped flat. We can do those cutouts. Inevitably the tube will give a bit, but once we've got it all on the jig, we can control that give, we can shim it up and then pull it back with clamps and then weld it up and make sure that once all the welds have contracted, everything's dead straight and level and true. So that's all good, that's where we're at on that. As I say, I'm going to flick past the body shop pretty quickly this week. Gaz has been working in there on various bits and bobs. I've mentioned the E-type roof, but he's also done some jobs for the den. There's been a few little paintwork jobs that we've needed to get on top of for the den, so he's been getting onto those. And also in the background to that, he's just holding fire for a couple of reasons on painting. We've got the very last little bits of prep to do on the XJ Coupe. However, he wanted to get the little jobs out of the way with first. The hurry on that is tempered a little bit by space for somewhere to put that car once it is painted, because we could do with another car space in the assembly workshop really before we can get that painted. But also Gaz wants to do a trial on a new spray gun. We currently use for our base coat, this is going off on a bit of a body shop tangent now, but for our base coat at the moment we use a very old Sartor 5000 spray gun. Very good, very high quality gun, but very old now, and it's a Sartor 5000 series base coat gun that we use at the moment. And Gaz has just got at the back of his mind that it's pretty old, it could do with a new fluid tip and needle probably. It's had one, I think, a few years ago. It could do, bear in mind we don't do that much paint work as a caveat to all this in terms of volume, so the guns aren't heavily used, but it could probably do with a new fluid tip and needle. They are now obsolete for that gun. And the gun is probably, I would guess, 13 years old now, 12 years old, something like that. It's probably time to think about a new one. Technology moves on, and I know that sounds like a bit of a sort of fluffy term really for things, but we've appreciated with the Iwata, we're not converts necessarily to one make of spray gun. We use an Iwata WS400 for our clear coat, and it's an exceptional clear coat gun. And it isn't just the same as every other clear coat gun. There are physical differences with the fluid tip and the air cap arrangements on that gun, and it is very different in how it paints to certain other guns. So I think Gaz is keen to move ahead with the base coat gun and make sure that we're up to speed and we're not missing out on anything. So to that end, I think he's endeavouring to get a Sartor base coat gun, current model base Sartor base coat gun on demo, so that we can trial that and see how he gets on with that, see what he thinks of that, and potentially we get a new, probably Sartor is the thinking at the moment, just because of the weight of various things in the background, but probably Sartor base coat gun, water-based base coat gun, so that going forward we're up to scratch on our base and clear guns as well as all the other guns that we use. We've had good success with Sartor. We also use Segola and we also use Iwata. So as I say, and ANI in fact. So we've got a few irons in the fire there. But the Iwata and Sartor stuff does seem pretty good. So we'll see where we go with that as time moves on. So that's what Gary's been up to with the various other bits. And I think at that point I've waffled on plenty enough. I'm going to hand over to Cal, let him take you through the assembly shop. So see you in a week's time.
Thank you very much, Nat. And you find me standing next to the Jensen Interceptor rear subframe, which, if you're familiar with Jensen Interceptors, you will realise is not normally what is found in the rear end of an Interceptor. Now this, in fact, for long-term followers of us, you'll know that the Interceptor we took over with it already partially done by somebody else, and they'd also chosen the route in terms of the front and rear subframes. And this is basically a package from a company in the States called Heidts, H-E-I-D-T-S, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, which is fundamentally a decent setup. Now, it had various modifications made, most of which we've now changed back. So it had been converted to outboard disc, but we weren't happy that the upright design, the way they attach to the wishbones, really was set up to take the torsional load of brakes being outboard. So we moved them back to being inboard, and we've done we rebuilt the way it's mounted at the front here. But one of the things we weren't super happy with was the strength of the boss that the coilover attaches to. So we're doing a bit of strengthening up on this. And we also wanted to just recheck over everything geometry-wise. We've swapped these. As it came to us, this was rose jointed both ends. Now we want to have bushes as a minimum on one end of all of the arms from an NVH point of view. I actually suspect that this potentially had the bushes on the inside end of these arms originally anyway, and had been changed to being rose jointed, because the way it had been mounted in the car, there were two additional links that were bracing the front of this diff up to the body, and they had the bushed ends, which now conveniently thread straight into these upper arms, and I think that might be where they lived originally. Anyway, everything looks good, sort of geometry-wise. We need to do that strengthening modification. Then we're going to strip everything apart and get all the surface finishing processes done. The only thing we're going to do at the minute, because we've noticed that this upper arm, with it all the way in, whether it had the rose joints or the bushes, it only just gets a small amount of negative camber on, and really we'd like to have more negative adjustments on there. But it's quite difficult to tell with it all on the bench. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave the upper arms bare, get all the surface finishing done on everything else, get it all built up in the car, and actually when we come to do the final alignment, decide whether we need to shorten these or not. I suspect we won't need to, but it's kind of on a knife edge, so that way we've not wasted any time, and if we do need to at that point, we'll just whip them off, shorten them and surface finish them and put them back on again. So that's where we're at with that. And then also, the engine and gearbox is sitting here from the Interceptor, so I'm very excited to see all that coming together. I mean, all of this is kind of making me envisage the car going together now, so it's at that point where excitement levels are high. We've got to go through it. I mean, it's a new engine, but it was with the previous people working on this car. It's been around a lot through dry build, so we need to do some good checking over this and then start going through all the surface finishing processes on that. The transmission was a used transmission, and some of vital parts of it are missing, so we're going to have to source a new transmission for this anyway, but it shouldn't be too difficult to source. It's a Dodge Charger transmission, so yeah, looking forward to pulling that apart and getting that sorted. Project Kuma, so I was out last week in it, as you saw, basically doing shakedown stuff, writing up snag lists, and then Gibbo and the guys have been going through the snag lists over the course of the last week. So some of the stuff last week that I went on my list were, there was a rattle from underneath near the handbrake lever, which turned out to be the handbrake linkage rattling on the bolts that hold the handbrake bezel down. So we've used slightly shorter bolts, and then we put some rubber cappings over the captive nuts to make sure that can't rattle anymore, because with the handbrake off, because there's a bit of slack in there, it's able to kind of slap up against the bottom of the tunnel there. So we sorted that out. I thought there was a little bit too much fuel pump noise being transmitted into the body. And although the fuel pump is in a rubber sleeve and clamped up, we decided to add some rubber stud mounts, or rubber bobbins you might call them, between the mounting plate for the fuel pump and the body to try and isolate some of that noise a bit more. So that's been done. Some general assembly. The column shroud hadn't gone on because we didn't need to for that initial testing, so that's now been fitted. So I think that is actually the interior completely buttoned up on this, with just the exception of where the 4-point harness mounts go. We're going to make some little sort of dummy bolts that go down there just to artistically finish those bits if you're not using harnesses like in this spec. Wiper arms and the hoses and the little on wiper arm jets have all been fitted now as well, and I think they're in the process of just doing the mounting of the grille. Wasn't much point fitting that straight away because it's just potentially open to damage, so there was no hurry to get that on, but we're going to get that on there now. Get some more miles on it. I mean, this customer actually is a very experienced driver and used to doing development work in a race setting, so I'm actually happy, and especially because we've already done a lot of development on the previous sister car to this, I'm kind of happy to get some miles on it and then hand it over to the owner with a proviso of, get some more miles on it, do more shakedown. There might be niggles and snags, but if I can get it to the point I'm happy there's nothing glaringly wrong with it, in this instance I'm happy to hand it over for him to do some more development miles on. So yeah, watch this space, shouldn't be too long on that. And then Algro, so I've been doing some hands-on work for a change. So I've just fitted the windscreen earlier today. Getting the glass in always really brings the car alive and makes it look so much more finished. And I'm in the process of doing the rear seals here. So James actually did one on the orange car a while ago, started the second one, but realised we were way short on seal because I'd made a miscalculation, only bought enough for one car Andy scrapped a couple of pieces making the first one, and then between ordering the stuff for the first car and then realising we were short and needing more, the supplier had decided they weren't going to stock that part anymore, so it was a special order from the manufacturer and it had a minimum order. So frustratingly we had to order a load of it and wait quite a while for it to arrive. However, it now has, so I'm just mitering and gluing those rear window seals. The sort of backstory there is that the original seals weren't good enough to use. You can't get them new. It's not just a universal profile that you can get new, and also I wanted it to be slightly different to original because we've done the black frame here, then we've added the E30 BMW strips here to really nicely create that same uniform width of black frame around the door. I wanted a seal profile that carried that on really nicely on the back as well, and this profile does. So going to get those done, that glass in, back seats ready to go in, and then with that in we can do the armrests in the rear, and James is poised to do the carpet. The doors are now completely finished. I've just put those little trim strips in with the tweed fabric on. They magnet onto some magnets that then cover the fixings for the armrests, which was all part of our fiendish plan. They look pretty darned awesome now. And then the instrument binnacle has just come back from anodising. So really the interior is extremely close now. We're going to get James on the gaiters and the carpet. So yeah, I mean, at the point they're done, it really is coming together. And then engine harness can go in, which they're in the latter stages of finishing that upstairs, along with the front chassis harness. It's getting close. So that's that. And Churchill. Luke will probably talk more about this in a second, but the air intake for this, so there's an air filter housing down under the near side wing. That's fed through one of the air intake bezels on the front panel, and then that feeds up through what will be a 3D printed part through the inner wing. Now originally we were going to use the standard Jaguar elbow that joins that intake pipe to the inlet manifold, but it's not a part we can get new. The one we had wasn't perfect, and it actually sat slightly awkwardly in there as well, so we decided we'd replace that with a standard silicon elbow. So that meant doing a slight tweak to the shape of that part anyway. So we've got a prototype on there, and then also we needed to add the air temperature sensor and breather spigots to it, which Luke has now done. Prototype's on, looking good, so that can be made as the final part. And then as a last step before the exhaust can go on, Adam's just been doing the transmission cooler lines. So we're running a little air to oil cooler for the transmission, which sits just under the main grille, kind of snuck under the front of the car, and we've done like a very, very subtle little air scoop under the front of the car, which ducts air up to it from what will be a high pressure area anyway, but it's not very visible when the car's at normal ride height. So he's running the lines from the cooler forward to that. As soon as they're clipped, we can get the exhaust system in, which is good. And then I think James is going to be carrying on now with the interior on this, so that's exciting news. And then I think next week we'll be able to crack on with the Camaro as well, so it'd be nice to see things moving forward with both these cars. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Luke to show you what he's been up to in the CAD lair.
Hi guys, welcome back to the CAD cul-de-sac. Thank you very much, Zola Soul Funk, for that one, and the whole list in general, because we were running out of names. I hate to say it, but it's the less attractive CAD guy up here giving you the video today. But George, I'll touch on what George has been on with. He has been doing E-Type AC stuff now, still. He is really, really nearly done now on that, and it is looking very cool, looking like a cool funky robot. So you always want your AC to look like a cool funky robot, don't you? And what have I been up with? That is a great question. Well, just to the side of Jamie, which I'm sure he'll get some funky video of, is the E-Type rear light cutting template, because there's a bit of Willy on block cutting to do in the back of the E-Type, where Matt needs to cut the holes for the rear lights to go through on a lovely metalworked rear end, which has got thousands of hours in it. So I made that tool, and that kind of borders the number plate recess, which should give some good positional information, along with some measurements that we can take from the CAD to then cut those holes in, and hopefully they are perfect. And then other than that, the Algro, a lot of the interior is in now, namely the upper and then lower center dash. And this week was the first time I saw that, and honestly I was so happy with how that looks. It looks so crisp, it looks so era correct to the car, and I think it's like, I'm so hyped just to see that come together. So in note of that, I have then been looking at the passenger side. There are a few plugs, USB ports, Motec plugs, things like that need to go on the passenger side in that little glove box region. So I confirmed that with Alex and created a little box which is held in by magnets, and kind of you flip that down to access the plugs. So that's going to get prototyped within probably the next half an hour. I can test all of that, and then we can start prototyping the entire passenger side, making sure that all fits in correctly, and then get that made properly, and then get that in the car, and then similar sort of process with the driver's side as well. I also plasma cut the door strips, so I think we did it for the blue car already, I just don't know if it was ever filmed, but they've got some accent strips on the door cards which are held in by magnets. I've made those now, painted them, and they've been headed over to the den to get trimmed. And then last of all, the final edits on like the really small details in that interior, like little little badges and cup holders and little outsourced 3D prints that we need to send out. They've all been confirmed now and sent out to be made. And honestly, I think that's one of the last things that I actually have to make for the Algro ever, I think, for that car anyway. And then moving on, the MG center console went over to the den, I think end of last week, so that was all bonded together, and then along with that I've given them the cubby hole tray, which was actually printed out TPU, kind of plastic TPU mashup filament, which is really cool. It seems really solid when you print small things, but then when I printed this I could almost bend it in half, and it had great material properties for what we want to do with it. So that's gone over to the den as well. So MG, really, again, I think that's all the work that I have to do done for it. And then Churchill, I think I mentioned at the end of last week that there was something that was designed ages ago for Churchill, an intake pipe, and then we couldn't get the correct elbow for that now. So I've had another look at that. I've redesigned that and tested it on the car. Everyone's relatively happy with that. I've got one tweak to make, which is very simple. I've just got to lengthen it by about 10-15 mil, and then that can honestly go straight to a final part. So very happy with that. That was nearly one and done. And I think that's it for Churchill. And then mainly since that point, so from end of day Tuesday, all of yesterday and all of today, other than doing a few little brackets and plasma cuttery bits here and there, I've been on with the E-type NACA ducts. You guys have seen so many different variations of front lip, intake ducts, holes in the front, just every sort of possibility you could possibly try and imagine, just to try and get as much air as possible, both to the engine but also to the radiator. It's a V12 in a small car. It's gonna, if you don't do that, it's going to overheat, and if you don't get enough engine in it, it's just not going to make the power that you need. So finally, the client has landed on NACA ducts in the bottom, which honestly was one of our favourite options, other than one which he didn't want to go for. This, I think, is going to be the cleanest option. You won't really see them from when you're looking at the car, which is a good thing. The car already looks amazing as it is. It doesn't really need anything on the front end. So these being tucked right under there will be no detraction from how the car looks, but will give you all the function that you want from it. So I've been fighting with Fusion to try and get these done, because everything on that car is one smooth surface, continuous surface, and obviously these need to match up with that perfectly. And so I've been trying to come up with a construction method to surface these in where it both looks good as a NACA duct, but also then the fit on the outside is perfect, and Fusion's been fighting me in every single way that it possibly could. But we're super close now. The middle three are done, they're ready to go, because they were the easiest ones to do, and they're on a much flatter surface. And now I've just got the two side ones which feed the engine to do. I'm about halfway through doing that, and then hopefully by end of this week, they can actually get printed, and we can hand those over to Matt to then do some more William block cutting on the car. Anyway, thanks guys, I think I'm going to leave it there. There is almost a million and one things that I forgot to mention to do with the den, but I'll mention them next week. Thanks guys, cheers.
Thank you very much, Luke. And actually I'm going to hand straight over to Nick to see what's going on down in the den.
Thank you, Cal, and hello, welcome back to the den. So starting this week with the MGF, which has been
kind of in the background a little bit. So Owen has stripped out the rear end completely, did that a while ago. We're now kind of assessing the state of the body and the chassis underneath. Generally it's pretty solid. There's some areas of surface corrosion and so on that we're just looking to treat locally. We're just kind of establishing all that right now as the best way to rectify that, make sure that it is all sound. We've identified a very good supplier who will supply complete assembled subframes with all the suspension on, which kind of ticks all the boxes for us. So we're going to look at that as an option. And we are then sticking with the hydroelastic suspension. So we'll probably look at reconditioned spheres, put all that back together more or less as standard, which is quite exciting. So well on with that. Aside from the kind of refreshing of the suspension and the corrosion side of things, we're also going to be diving into the engine. We'll do a full service on the engine. We're going to do a leak down just to check the integrity of that. There was a trace of some water on the oil analysis, so we're just going to check on that. Then some service items, so we're going to change the starter motor because it's easy to get to and it's quite old. We'll do all the cam belt, we'll do the water pump and so on while it's all out of the car. So that's where we are on MG. We'll come over to the corner where Luke is well into the Lupo. As you can see, engine gearbox out of the Lupo, with various jobs that we were doing on the front of the car. We basically had all the front of the car off, so it was easy just to take the whole engine and gearbox out as an assembly. We had to get to the clutch. What we found on the clutch, the cover was distorted unusually. I've not really seen it before, so we've got a new cover on there, and a new flywheel. We've kept the existing plate because it's an upgraded plate and it's nothing wrong with the plate. And we are in the process of speccing and sourcing a new master cylinder and a new slave cylinder because they are not OEM parts. The issue on the slave cylinder, on the master cylinder, sorry, was there's too acute an angle on the push rod, so it was the rod was basically catching on the corner of the bore of the cylinder, so it's ruining the cylinder basically. So we're well on with that. Luke is working through some of the other jobs that the customer wants doing, just some kind of fairly straightforward service maintenance work at the moment, which is all good. So that's where we are with the Lupo. XJC, the boot lid's being painted by Retropower as I speak, and that's the last thing on that, and that can go back to the customer in due course. Couple of bits coming from the CAD Den from the 3D printer at Retropower for that. So we'll be getting those on in the next couple of days. Very excited with that. We're still looking at bits of interior for the customer, but that might be a job for another time. Not really sure yet, we haven't decided. MGB is mechanically we're pretty much there with that, and James upstairs is finishing off bits of interior. That's really exciting, and I know that Cal's talked about the interior on that. Then we have another new car. We have very exciting Suzuki Cappuccino. So the customer's had this for a long time, and it was getting a bit ratty, so he wanted to restore it. So about 10 years ago, he took it off the road, stripped it himself to a bare shell. He's had the shell completely restored. I've seen all the photos of that, and painted. The customer's since moved abroad for work, and it's been sat for a good while in this condition it's in now, which is kind of rolling, half assembled. And he basically just wants it finished. So we're looking at it for him with a view to basically getting it finished off, getting it buttoned up for him, recommissioning everything, getting it MOT'd and fully sort of roadworthy and everything. One of the main things we're looking at the moment is under the bonnet. So these have got the tiny little, I think they're 650cc 3-cylinder engines that meet the K-class regulations in Japan, and we're looking at getting a crate engine because the crate engines are pretty cheap. rather than rebuilding this one, because it's a bit tatty, and one of the things he wants doing is having the engine rebuilt or refreshed. So we're looking at a crate engine at the moment, along with a new gearbox, which will be much more cost effective than rebuilding. He doesn't want anything crazy doing with it, so it's a more cost effective way to achieve that. We've not really been into it yet, to be honest with you. Customers coming over to see us next month, so we can go through all the other parts he's got for it, and we can kind of have a bit of a plan of action. But yeah, we're super excited to have this here. Really cool little thing, very rare, and we will be getting on with this next month when the customer's here. So that is it from me this week. I'm going to hand over to Cal, who is upstairs with James in our upholstery shop.
Bingo. Right, thank you very much, Nick. And as you may have noticed if you were watching last week, I basically ran out of hours in the day and didn't manage to do my piece, which was going to be a recap on where we got to with the upholstery. So since the last time we were literally here, Richard obviously has done his last day. He's now moved on. I thought he did a very nice farewell on the video before last, and he really appreciated all the comments. So thank you for everybody's kind words about Richard. I think probably as of next week, we might see if James fancies doing a piece to camera. But a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks. So last time, both of the guys were on with the SL500 interior. That went in the car week before last, and I have to say, jointly, they absolutely smashed it out of the park. It looked so good. Sent some pictures over to the customer, and he was just like, yeah, that looks amazing. And I will say, and I'll no doubt be watching, he's generally a man of relatively minimal words, so to receive a positive comment was like, yep, that's definitely good then. I don't think you've seen it in the flesh yet, but I've absolutely no doubt he's going to love it. It's just such a cool car as well, and I think that it was sort of a bold choice to go with almost like a terracotta-y leather against a champagne gold, if you like, car. But yeah, it just looked the business, which is actually what we informally called the project. So that has now gone, and then all hands on the MG. So the guys were patterning the carpets. They've now made all the carpets, edged the carpets in the same leather that everything else is upholstered with. I'm looking down out here, not because I'm having a stroke, but because the car is down there. So that's all in now. Rear bulkhead panels finished and in. It's just a case of getting it all together. Richard's shown the seats a couple of weeks ago, done, so I've seen them in the car. They're back out just to do some of the dash reassembly work on it. But the seats look absolutely awesome in there, MX5 seats, and they just seem to suit it really well. And then the console is the bit that's coming together now. So you'll have seen Luke, I think, had just set all the prints going last week. He's then bonded all the parts together. So I think we did it sectionally in 3 sections. It's been printed in-house actually in carbon strand reinforced nylon, and then bonded together with like a epoxy structural bonding adhesive. That's great. Came down here, James has smoothed it all out. That's now been leathered, and then to coincide really nicely with that, we got the billet parts through. So there's like a little bezel, a sort of hexagon-shaped bezel, which was a nod to the original speaker grille that was down in that area in the car, and then also the little trim ring around the gear gaiter. They were machined super fast by Andy Parrott, Concept 303. Really nice job as always. They fit perfectly. We also printed the sort of cubby hole, the innards of the cubby hole, if you like. So where that hex-shaped bezel is, there's actually now a hole through to a little cubby hole. You can put your phone or whatever in there, and it will have a USB socket in there. We printed that in-house as well. That's great. And then the only remaining bits on that are the gear gaiter, which James has just been patterning for. So that should probably be ready by the end of the day. And then we've subbed out a couple of 3D prints, so the cup holders, and then there's a little kind of coin tray at the back. We subbed them out because they're going to be like a real visible in your face finish, and they really need to be an SLS print just so they've got a better surface finish than what we can get with our FDM type printing. So hopefully they'll be through next week, and that'll complete that. And to be fair, with that done, that pretty much wraps up the interior. I think we've got to fit the kick panels and speakers still. Seats have got to go back in, and that console's got to be finished. And that is about it. So I'm very, very looking forward to seeing the culmination of all of that, because I think that centre console really just sets off that interior. It kind of puts it everything else in this sort of design-wise in the interior is subtle, classy, just nice, and then that console just adds a little extra kind of pop, just sets it aside from your typical MG, because there are quite a few off-the-shelf consoles you can get that are just a bit kind of lackluster. I think those little billet parts just really set it off nicely, and then there's pull straps we've done on the doors as well with the chrome bezel. They look really nice. So yeah, it's going to come together really nicely, that is. So that's that, and then Algro stuff is the other order of the day. So what he's literally working on now is the column shroud. So although we've designed all of the dash completely, in all the lower sections, upper dash, it's all our own design, all 3D print. The column shroud, because all of the mechanicals and the controls are Honda Integra Type R, the column shrouds are standard Integra Type R. So he's just prepping them to be leathered. Quite a complicated shape, so not the easiest part to upholster in leather. But just working through that now, and then he's also cut the sections to do the second steering wheel. So you'll have already seen the brown steering wheel, which Richard did the other week. So no pressure, just gearing up to do the blue steering wheel for the other car. So yeah, looking forward to seeing all that lot come together, because by the time we've got these column shrouds done, I'm waiting on a subcontracted 3D print for the rear shroud of the steering wheel, which kind of covers where the wiring comes out the horn buttons. And then we've got to do the lower sections of the dash, but we are getting close to everything going together on those interiors. And I've just ordered the carpets, so that's another thing James will be on with over the coming weeks, is doing the carpets, which then will wrap up the interiors. And I don't think I've ever looked forward to seeing an interior come together as much as I am with these Algro interiors, particularly this one. I don't know. I always thought that about the two Escorts as well, that I preferred Project 1 right up until we've almost finished Project Kuma, and now I'm like, I don't know, actually, I do really like that, and I wonder if the same will happen. I've been favouring the brown all the way through, and I'm wondering whether the blue will actually just jump ahead at the last minute. Anyway, that's it for me here. Thank you very much to everyone who subscribed, pushed us over the 70,000 subscriber mark. I think just at the end of last weekend, might have been Monday when we finally tipped over. But yeah, thank you very much. And if you haven't already, go and subscribe now. It's free, and it means a lot to us to see those numbers go up. And we'll see you again next week.